So my name is Yonatan N. I'm based at the ISCTE at University in Lisbon. And I'm very excited that this panel takes place here today. And 2 days ago, there was another one that very much kind of links well with the same kind of ideas about past futures. So there seems to be a lot of interest in where this line of research is going. So about 3-4 years ago, I think I also kind of caught this direction, saw that something is emerging, and started thinking about an ERC, European Research Council project on what I call, and I'm not the only one using that term, the afterlives of development interventions. Okay, so this is the language that we're using: the living dead, the zombies, the afterlife. I think, by the way, I would say this in brackets, that I already heard that in the opening words, right? I mean, there's a question of framing. There's a framing of kind of positivity, of opportunity, of local agency, and then there's the framing of horror and all of it. So, of ghost, right? Of destruction, of ruins, and it's always a question how. So I kind of am happy with afterlives, because it's somehow it evokes something perhaps also a bit spiritual. But essentially, the idea is that we're looking beyond the formal timeframes of a development interventions, funding cycle, or in many respects, its formal reach, its formal objectives. And I want to tell you about this project, and if time permits, maybe share some directions where we're going with this. Everything is still very much tentative. We're trying to develop a set of methods that go along with our approach to the question, right? So we call this Afterlives, the Afterlives Development Interventions. We look at Eastern Africa, so again, Kenya, as well as Tanzania and Mozambique. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. AF stands for Africa, could be after, development, international development. I mean, we can spend the whole day discussing what should be put in this basket. We tend to approach the concept of development in a pretty inclusive way, and as a general rule, we embrace a kind of a bottom-up approach to the terminologies. So really, development is what counts as development for the people with whom we engage, which could be a lot of things, including things that we in this room might not normally consider as development, strictly speaking. And lives is really our emphasis, right? The kind of lived experiences of people on the ground, kind of the reappropriations of projects, especially after they kind of run their course. And this whole combined title evokes this cadence of afterlives, which is conjugated in the plural because, well, especially after the formal scripts and collapse, you would often have a kind of multiplicity of possibilities, kind of a sometimes, I mean, it's a bit romantic to say democratization of ruins, but certainly many avenues that open up once you have this recession of the imposed formal scripts of how it should be. Okay, oops, other direction. So I'm the PI. We have 3 brilliant PhDs. One of them is with us today, and 2 brilliant postdocs. One of them is here with us today, hiding her head in shame. But it's really, I mean, it's a group effort, and I think we try to make this as collaborative as possible, both within the team and with the communities that we will work with. And also, I would say a lot of it has to do with collaborations directly with universities and researchers in East Africa. It's a very central element in what we do. Happy to talk about it some more later on. So where is this coming from? A word about the background of this project. So a couple of years ago, as a side project, okay, my background is more in anthropology of religion, really. As a side project a few years ago, I joined a colleague of mine who had a research by National Science Foundation project looking at Israel-led, I'm originally from Israel, Israel-led the agricultural cooperatives that were implemented in a couple of countries in Sub-Saharan Africa in the 1960s and 1970s. If you know the kibbutz or the moshav, these kind of agricultural cooperatives. And I visited some in Zambia and Tanzania. There were some in other places as well. And wherever I went, there was this question, right, that you always heard, that we heard, when are you coming back? And of course, it's a question that makes me as a researcher very uncomfortable, right? I don't want to kind of create false hopes. And also, I don't want to be confused with a development worker, because in my mind, I am not. And there's a lot of literature that actually kind of blurs that kind of makes, I think, a good argument why we are more like development workers than we actually think of ourselves, right? But I think mainly I was kind of struck by a paradigm of work that creates a very kind of problematic, I think, alienation between the people and the places where they are. We're very much focused on oral interviews. We're very much focused on kind of narratives of history. And I felt that there must be another way or other ways in which we can really try to grasp what it means to be kind of embedded, to be kind of embodied in a place where you kind of, your landscape is strewn with those interventions. And this is something that is part of your existence over many decades, right? So to me, this kind of this short question, which we heard a lot, symbolized a lot of things, but it also really, I think, symbolized a very kind of narrow frame of how the projects are engaged with, right? Through a very kind of particular prism of utility, of investment, of success and failure, and I felt that this is missing a lot of what is how it actually is for the people to be living and working to coexist alongside these projects over time. And I started reading about this, and there's a lot of literature on that. Robert Chambers, one of the pioneers of participatory approaches to development, also kind of encouraged me through his question, what is it that makes development studies academics and researchers, and one might add also development practitioners, because there's a lot of kind of flow from one to the other, quite conservative in terms of approaches and methods. He says, so conservative. And I thought this is a challenge, right? How would we try to really capture kind of the experiences of places where development was implemented without still maintaining the kind of the prism, the kind of the assumptions, the language, the perspective of the development projects themselves, right? Including the prism of success and failure. And essentially, the way that the way that I articulated it to myself, how do we move beyond thinking about development as happening in sites? So sites, you think about construction sites, you think about, something that is prospective, right? Towards an objective, to seeing projects as something that happens to happen in places where people live, where people have a very intimate connection to their environment. And how do we capture that? So, I mean, I think this is kind of something that is hovering over this double panel, right? The prospective idea of development is progress, and then if we think about ruination and nostalgia, right? This backwards idea, right? This idea again of past futures, and but what we really are interested in, and well, don't know how to, yeah, but anyway, the central one, right? So we are really interested in the present experience, what it is to be kind of in this intermittent kind of space, right, where you have those projections of ideas of a certain future, oftentimes kind of imposed or external to the community, and then you have those kind of experiences of these ideas not necessarily coming to fruition, but in between you've got these people who kind of live, make sense of all these interventions over time. It's really important to emphasize that we're not looking at projects sensu stricto, right? We're not interested in how projects are successful or unsuccessful in and of themselves. I want to show you an example how how our approach tries to be a little different here. So this is the project office of one of the agricultural cooperatives that I was looking at in northwestern Tanzania in 2015. And this is one project, but if you look at the village, actually, you broaden your perspective, you see that actually this was just one of many, many, many interventions that kind of pass through that area over time. And this is quite a small village, kind of so-called peripheral area, and yet within it, it kind of holds a great multiplicity. So we're trying to be a lot more interested in kind of the story of a place and this kind of multi-layering of different interventions over time and the way that people make sense, combine all those experiences. The research question, right, for our project is how are the representational and material remains of past development interventions in Eastern Africa experienced, employed, and reappropriated by local actors over time, and how does such immanence of the multi-layered past come to bear on local life worlds, okay? And here we get our cue, or at least when I was kind of began thinking about this, I was very inspired by the work of Tim Ingold, even though he doesn't talk about development as such, but I feel that he is very much going in that direction of trying to hold the human experience as something that is completely kind of inseparable from our surrounding, from the context that everything kind of operates at the same time. It's not the human agent that just operates on on the material world, on the environment, in the same way that it is not only the designer, the development designer, who operates on the kind of the local context where they kind of implement their ideas. What does it mean to try to develop a dwelling perspective that kind of takes into consideration how people are in place, and which other methods should be used so that we don't end up with these kind of questions of when are you coming back? These kind of very reductionist ideas of being thought of as kind of representatives of development interventions themselves. Right. So the way that this works, we have 3 work packages that are focused more on field work. We haven't actually started our field work. We are leaving. This summer, we're going to do our first round of fieldwork the end of this month. And there are various methods that are really just the starting point to start thinking about that deep connection between people and places over time. So we have movement, image, and storytelling. So for example, for each one, this is really just a starting point. Something that I really believe in is the practice of walking interviews. So again, this feeling of kind of grounded, the close connection between the people and the environment, and how the environment affects our interaction in real time, right? So it's not just a kind of a discursive reflection, intellectual kind of distancing, but everything is in place. work with graphics, had some really nice examples now of what can be done with that, and also focusing on objects and what they mean in object biographies. At the same time, there's kind of a second layer of developing participatory methods together with local actors, with the idea that the third stage would be to then also think together with locals, what does that, how would you see that translated into a kind of a voice, right? What would you like to say and to whom and with the use of which tools, right? So we can develop collaboratively certain outputs that then in all sorts of ways could then perhaps transferred back perhaps to the institutional areas of those organizations that operated in those localities. And yeah, so these are some of the ideas. Selection of case studies. Okay, so do I have 2 more minutes to? Okay, so very quickly, because I think maybe this was a little too abstract. So this summer we are going, actually at the end of this month, we're going to Western Kenya, a place called Kakamega. And I want to give you just a little example of how we might approach this, right? One of many case studies that we will be developing. So in the 1980s and 1990s, there was a huge water infrastructure project financed by the government of Finland through a number of consultancies. In this area, you can see in red in Western Kenya, a very densely populated area, and it was very, very ambitious. You see the title here, Water for a Million. The idea was we will provide fresh drinking water, shallow wells, boreholes and such, to over 1 million people. Today there are many more living there in the area. The project ran for about 15 years. I'm not getting into the details. Actually, some of the wells are still operating today. And so what do we do with something like that? Now, this is an imperfect example because here I'm starting from the project rather than from the locality, right? So, but it's still, I think, a good illustration. We also have other examples where we kind of start more from the place. So what do we do in something like that? First of all, we visited the sites. This was already last year. Sorry about that, Elizabeth. Yeah, so, you visited the site, we talked to people, kind of very preliminary discussion. Here on the bottom, you can see this is the estate where the Finnish development workers were living. There's the swimming pool next to it is the sauna as well that they have built, right? All those kind of remains that are still very much with us and what has become of them through the years. Secondly, we went to the archives both in Finland and in Kenya to look at the material. We found thousands of documents in Finnish and in English mainly. Thirdly, we went to Finland and we interviewed mainly retired engineers who worked in that project in the 80s and 90s. It was very moving. Some of them invited us to their homes, and lots of family photos from that time, or photos of friends from the project, and memories and pastime and all those things. And now this is where we're going now. Oops, I don't know what happened there. So at the end of this month, we're going to have a large collaborative fieldwork and training exercise there in Kakamega. I'm finishing in a minute. And then the idea is that, and this is something I'm very excited about, together with Moi University in Eldoret in Western Kenya, we're going to kind of bring in those different voices. We're going to invite the Finnish development workers and local actors, and also, and of course, our own researchers, and we're going to have a conversation, right? Because I don't know what that would bring, but I think it's really, really essential to have this conversation 30 years or so after the project has ended. What are the expectations? What are the obligations? What are responsibilities? What else can be done or shouldn't be done? And of course, also on the Finnish side, there's a lot of personal memories, a lot of personal experiences related to this. And then we develop a couple of individual case studies, and then we want to co-create relevant material together with local communities. So this is kind of the order of how we might work. But of course, things are open. We only started 8 months ago. We're going to run for 5 years until 2027. Happy to be part of a conversation, wider conversation, and we can talk some more afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much.